Thanks. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon or good morning from wherever you are tuning in today. We are excited to bring the concept of Cyber Talent Week in Fusion. And believe it or not, this is the first session that we're having. And just after a quick 3 to 4 months of initial ideation and how to put it together, we are sweeping through the North American landscape from West Coast to East Coast on the topic of cyber talent. This is something that has come up virtually in every session that we have had in the last several iterations of Cyber Future Summit. When we met in Augusta last year, we did 38 sessions. I think 32 of them in the transcripts had cyber talent as an issue. And we committed to the community and our industry members and the leaders that we work with that we will scrutinize this. We'll deconstruct the problem of cyber talent and identify what can we do to advance this. So in this mission, we have an incredible partner and a range of partners. And Amy, you have been a great supporter and sponsor for us, and also now got introduced to Martin. And I'm glad to kick off the Cyber Talent Week with you guys and girls. So excited. Both of you are very much embedded into this field and advancing cybersecurity as an industry and profession. And the profession cannot exist without having professionals, right? So I believe this is a fitting kickoff to the Cyber Talent Week, and being the first panel, I have the great pleasure and honor to be alongside you kicking this off. We discussed prior to this quite a few interesting topics, and we also discussed that we are not going to just look into the cyber profession for the learning for cyber. We should go and reach out to where there have been templates and models for success and bring them to this industry, make it stronger and scalable, and so that we can sustain this for the duration and for the digital transformation that we're supporting. So welcome you both, welcome you all to the Cyber Talent Week. I'll kick this off with a kind of round of introductions. So Amy, if you'd go first and just introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Val. And hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here today. My name is Amy DeSalvatore. I lead business development and strategic alliances at NightDragon. I have been with the firm for a little over a year. For those of you that aren't familiar with NightDragon, we're a venture platform. We also have advisory services. And our focus is really cybersecurity, safety, physical security, and privacy. But most of our assets exist in the cybersecurity space. And in addition to my business development and strategic alliance roles, I lead a couple specific programs that directly relate to this session around talent, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so one of the first partnerships that we put in place at NightDragon was through Val and Cyber Future Foundation. Very, very active and aware of what's going on in the cyber talent industry. We see it across all of our portfolio companies. And we see the need to do something about it. And so it's great to be here today. And I'm based here in San Francisco.
Well, thank you, Amy. Thanks for joining us this morning. Martin, do you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Great to be with you, Val and Amy. Thanks so much for the opportunity to share some thoughts. My name is Martin Keck. I'm the head of education technology and corporate learning investment banking at Needham & Company. Needham is a 35-year-old tech-focused investment bank. So we work primarily with emerging growth companies to help them raise capital, go through M&A transactions, and ultimately take some of them to the public markets. Some relevant to this conversation are companies like Pluralsight in sort of the tech training space, KnowBe4 in the kind of anti-phishing awareness space, and then a number of cybersecurity companies, which I'm not directly related with, but Needham has a long background in the space, working with folks like CrowdStrike and Cloudflare and Darktrace, kind of most recently last year. So it's definitely an area where we've spent a lot of time at the intersection of kind of education technology and tech education, and an area that we've seen a lot of transformation and opportunity in, given the immense sort of skills gap that continue to exist in the space. So excited to share some observations we've seen from the broader tech career ecosystem out there and how it relates to cyber.
Excellent, and that's I think the broad perspective that you bring in, and I think overall Needham's background, I am sure we need all of that to make sure that we advance on the cyber side as well. Great. So let me kick off with a question where we'd probably just go around three of us. I think we kind of have a little different perspective and stitch it together to see what we need to kind of address as issues, and also what kind of solutions should we look at. So the first thing that we have in the mind, and maybe related to the drastic and the sudden change that we have seen in the education space, in the workforce development area, especially in the last 2 years, right? Pandemic has changed a lot of things. The education and access to education is definitely one of the things that has come to mind. What do you see, and maybe Martin, we start with you. What do you see as some of the significant shifts, and how is the education landscape different today, and what do you think it will be moving towards?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the pandemic has certainly given us all exposure to the phenomenon of online education. And I think for many individuals, particularly career changers, folks have had exposure to the growing area of alternative education. And so I think, maybe sort of stepping back a little bit, one of the huge changes that we've seen really over the last 5 or 10 years is the important role that alternative education providers have played in training the tech workforce broadly defined. So, universities and colleges, traditionally have graduated a number of graduates in sort of the cybersecurity or in the computer science field, more narrowly focused. Cybersecurity has been less of a topic, but you've seen really in the last 5 or 10 years the advent of all these coding boot camp players, massively open online course providers that have provided an on-ramp to kind of the careers of the future, in particular in the tech arena, initially around software engineering, but now increasingly in more focused areas like cybersecurity. So that's been huge. I think notably over the last 2 years, the number of graduates from these tech skills programs in the US has actually eclipsed the number of graduates from computer science conventional 2-year or 4-year college programs. So very interesting to see that. And frankly, I think without those programs creating more supply of talent into the workforce, we'd have an even greater skills gap, and we'd be more challenged sort of as an industry to fill all the need that exists out there. So that's been, I think, really transformational. One of the other things that we've seen is enterprise starting to take notice and starting to participate, and also starting to kind of lay, a claim, at least plant some seeds within the education domain. One initiative that I'd point to that I think is pretty interesting is all of the Google open certificate programs that have been launched through Coursera as a partner there, that train individuals in a number of tech domains, not cybersecurity yet, but who knows with kind of the Mandiant transaction. But give people a very cost-effective, free, in the case of the Google certificates, on-ramp into tech careers broadly. So we think programs like that are particularly valuable in closing the skills gap and really represent a step forward for the education landscape as a whole.
No, absolutely. I think that's massive when it comes to if we're able to, and it's not a question of if, I think it's a question of when we're able to apply the scale of tech, kind of talent, workforce capacity bridging, and bring it over to cyber. I think we'll be probably pointing at the right scale. Amy, your thoughts around how do we apply this to cyber, and why is it even relevant now, and what's driving this forward?
Yeah, I mean, we have just seen a massive influx of need, right? And a lot of that is driven by the market conditions. If you look at the escalating threats now that we're seeing in the marketplace, and what that looks like, across the board internationally, not just with what we saw with the Colonial Pipeline and potential threats to critical infrastructure and the impact that that can have, all the ransomware attacks that unleashed themselves over the last couple of years, but internationally what's going on in the Ukraine with now cyber attacks becoming part of warfare. Cyber warfare is a very real thing. And I think the stats are that they saw a 10 times increase as a result of that. All of those elements are driving a need for us to have better cyber defenses that frankly, we just don't have at this point. And that is driving the need for cyber talent, because it's great if you have great technology, but if you don't have people to actually build it and implement it, it really doesn't do any good. And so what we're feeling is this push and this market dynamic that's showing an increased need for cyber talent, but it's also pushing us to think about applying talent in a much different way, right? I think initially people thought, oh, if we just have more workers, we'll be in better shape. But we realized that there needs to be more automation. And so part of the reason that it's fun to have Martin on with me today is we're both invested in a mutual asset called ThriveDX, which does start to apply some SaaS-based learning practices to the overall need. And I think we will start seeing more companies like ThriveDX popping up in the marketplace. And we absolutely need that in order to scale in the way that we need to scale. There's also an element that government probably needs to play a bigger role. And so I know we'll get probably more into that as we go through the session today. But the market dynamics are really driving it. I think the other shift is just an increased need for automation and a higher level of awareness all the way around.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Can't agree with you more. I think, there is the digital transformation that has happened over the last 5-10 years, the digital twins of many of the things that we have seen being represented. I think the whole the massively online open courses and all these platforms, they are literally becoming the digital twins of academia, universities today. And the sheer acceptance of companies like Google, my former employer UI, and other places that we have seen has found creative ways to apply those modularized trainings to something that can be, made into a curriculum, and practitioners can adopt those to their profession. So great. I think both of those insights really are very helpful. Now, if we want to pivot a little bit in terms of how the pandemic and the whole COVID situation has changed the access to education, right? I'd like to dwell on that a little bit to understand how can we take this as an opportunity? Because, one thing that I realized very, kind of in retrospect is that it has taken away some of the in-person education, or it has, but it has also opened up so much new avenues for people to learn from wherever they are. And this learning could be translated to actual, work environment, which also has become more remote focused, and people have the opportunity to work from where they are. So if you can work from wherever you can, why can't you learn from wherever you can, right? But how does that help? So maybe, Martin, you take a stab at it as to how do we address or how do we take the opportunity that has been presented through COVID?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I mean, the bootcamp market, kind of as a microcosm, most bootcamp providers had physical locations all over the country, and we're hosting these classes in person. Even the part-time programs often had an element of sort of convening as a group. But everybody quickly adapted to the COVID environment and was able to deliver classes online with just as much efficacy and just as much engagement. As much as anything, the success of these programs is built on the strength of their curriculum and the way that they engage with learners, as well as learners' kind of intrinsic motivations and their desire to kind of upskill into careers of the future. So that can be just as effective online as in person. I mean, conceptually, if you think about sort of tech careers in general, they mostly involve spending time in front of a laptop, and that is easily achieved remotely as it is in person in a physical classroom format. I do think it has some interesting implications for equity and broader diversity in the workforce. Being able to deliver platforms maybe more cost effectively in an online manner. You made reference to the MOOCs, Val, and again point to some of those initiatives that are free or very cost effective as on-ramps for people to at least begin to understand the industry. As Amy mentioned, around Thrive DX, our partner there, they have an introductory course, which is priced at about $200, which provide effectively 40 hours of instruction to give individuals sort of a taste of what a career in cybersecurity looks like, to really demystify the cybersecurity field. So it's kind of a unique approach, but I think needed in cyber, because cyber is less well understood than the mystique of a software engineer in Silicon Valley, which is captured in all sorts of popular media, and people have a general conception of what that career path looks like. So I think that is something that also deserves attention. Really spreading the word for the opportunity in cyber broadly, and what those career paths look like.
Sure. And Amy, I mean, what do you think about getting this packaged in specific? I think if you want to apply this to the new models of digital access to training, you can actually package this much more nimbly and agile, right? I mean, you see NightDragon has a big portfolio of cyber, and so what do you think about packaging it and increasing the level of awareness in the industry to address specific issues with the flexibility?
Yeah, I mean, well, the accessibility issue is key, right? And that's really what this does, is it allows it to be more accessible, to Martin's point, not only accessible to the masses, but accessible to people who wouldn't otherwise have access to it in more diverse backgrounds, which we need, because we know that when they're in these jobs, companies do better and we all benefit because we broaden the scope of the workforce. We at NightDragon, interestingly, had never invested in an edtech platform before. And it was because we saw the need. And, it's interesting when I say the need, there's a couple things motivating our behavior to do that. One is we're capitalists and we have a venture platform. And so we want to invest in something that will have a high return. But it's also a true pleasure when you can invest in an organization that is doing good for the world, that's providing employment options for individuals, while at the same time helping with national security. And so that triad kind of came together for us with Thrive DX. It was an asset that we saw performing extremely well. I think they were growing like 80% year over year. And that growth was largely fueled by all these elements and dynamics that we're talking about, while at the same time driving a greater level of accessibility in terms of offering a digital platform for cybersecurity training. And so it's the first investment that we made, but it was a significant one. We led a $100 million round in the company, working very closely with Needham and the other partners who were involved. And I think it's a sign of things to come in terms of where NightDragon is going to invest, because of that element of being able to kind of blend a personal passion with a national security passion, with a capitalistic passion. And so, I think you'll see more of that, not just from NightDragon, but from other VCs as these companies become more available. But the travesty is that there just aren't that many of them available, right? And so it's great to have companies like Thrive DX be accessible and drive accessibility of training for cyber, but we need 1,000 more Thrives on the market to help us really have an impact and scale. And so that's the kind of growth that I would like to see as a result of some of the success that Thrive and others are seeing.
Yeah, no, I'm glad, it was very timely. I think, even for the times to come, I mean, especially now with the whole Russia-Ukraine situation, we almost saw a huge surge of this coming, right? You can't wait for people to graduate and to come and kind of address the challenges in the cyber battlefield. You need people who can quickly upskill, reskill, and be deployed. So I'm glad that that market, has attention of the leading VCs, including NightDragon and the investment banks and like Needham. I think it's a very, the way you described this is absolutely poignant. I think, the combination of those three aspects of business, of need, and doing a greater good for the society could not be better in another field. And if I may, I'll probably put a plug in terms of what, we are going to do just after the Cyber Talent Week. We are doing a pilot for a tech help desk. I think we mentioned to this earlier, Amy, that we're going to do a pilot of a traveling tech help desk, which is basically all these services and learning content that is available is typically not accessible to people who don't have devices. So we came up with this concept that initially let's go to 5 cities. We just picked 5. Sacramento is one, Seattle, Washington, D.C. area, Phoenix and Dallas, Fort Worth. We will establish a place where some, people who are registered can come and have access to this. They will have laptops there and good connectivity, so they can come and take advantage of those. I think this is where the nonprofit and the investment banks and the for-profit and the public sector all come together and make not only great content, but also give them access to the people that may not have access to, and expand that reachability, right? Last mile.
And I don't know how you feel about this, Martin, but it's the first time in my career, my entire career, where I've had those 3 things come together, right? So and I think that's probably true for a lot of people in cyber. You realize that because of the diversity issue, that you're able to kind of, appease a personal passion with helping people and marry that with this other element of helping with security and capitalizing at the same time. So it's kind of a cool union.
Yeah, it's really an area that lends itself towards kind of partnerships and kind of mutual wins. And I think the other leg of that is less well developed, but Thrive and others are certainly thinking about is how to involve enterprise more in that talent pipeline. I think Amy, I was sort of sharing my anecdote from a very separate industry, the truck driving space, which is also an area of acute demand right now. Where many of the trucking companies and the transportation companies out there, inclusive of folks like Amazon and Swift and people like that, actually pay to sponsor students through kind of the truck driving training programs, which I think has the potential to be ported over to the cyberspace, certainly, since it is such an area of incredible demand and need right now. I think it also fulfills many of the kind of philanthropic and equity, diversity objectives that many corporations have as well. So I'm personally excited to see more of that unfold. I think broadly in tech education, there's also been quite a bit of interest from more philanthropic investors as well. The ISA kind of movement to fund some of these education experiences had a lot of impact capital kind of embedded in those mechanics, which were not perfect. But I still see a lot of opportunity there for people to achieve mutual win situations, making a good return while having a lot of impact on individuals, and also sort of addressing an important national need.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that absolutely resonates with the people that want to contribute, especially cybersecurity and the security industry by itself. Like Amy, you may relate to this, that there is a different dimension and thinking when it comes to security and cybersecurity people. They're very mission oriented. So this mission everybody can get behind, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about a little bit of what can we learn from outside. I think there are different, not only different sectors, which basically we started talking about IT and other areas, but other countries are also taking different approaches to it. Europe has a huge apprenticeship model. China, India has a literally massive academic industry model, which even I'm a product of. I would say, like, the number of engineers that are spawned out of the Indian engineering colleges is huge, and so is China. So we have different choices and options. I think we're at the outset of this cybersecurity talent gap. And if we're to bridge this, we have options. So what are your thoughts coming to the tools that we have to or choices from other countries that we can take, or other regions we can take?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take that just because I've been doing a little research on it, but and I hate to, it's probably not the most popular topic to use China as the example, but China is sort of a shining example right now with what they're doing around cybersecurity training. They just built a national cybersecurity center, which is in Wuhan. It's 15 square miles of a campus. It's absolutely massive, and it brings together kind of the brightest minds of government and people and experts in the industry who have now put together 7 centers. There's 7 centers for research, talent cultivation, entrepreneurship. There's an exhibition center. There's an innovation center. And then kind of, I think Martin touched on this a little bit in his what he just said, but there's also a huge marketing campaign that goes around it, which really is winning the hearts and minds of the entire culture around you have to be or you want to be in cybersecurity. And so the Talent Cultivation Center alone is expected to turn out about 6,000 certified cybersecurity professionals every month. And that amounts to about 75,000 a year. Over the course of a decade, that'll be about 500,000 people that they're delivering to the market around cybersecurity. We are very behind when you compare what we're doing with those efforts, right? And granted, they have a different political system and there's a lot of complexities there that in bureaucracy there that we wouldn't want to get involved with in policymaking. But there are things we can learn from what they're doing, especially around what they're doing to make it cool and sexy to be a part of cybersecurity and the infrastructure that they're putting in place to make these certifiable degrees, which we do not have in the US today, right? I mean, if you ask a kindergartner or a first grader what they want to be, they'll say a doctor or a firefighter, or they'll say a lawyer. They're not going to say, I want to be a chief information security officer. And that's because it starts very early in their life cycle to get them thinking that that's going to be a cool job and a lucrative job, and that that society sees value in doing it. And so China has really kind of mastered this, and it's a little scary how good they're getting at it and the investment that they're putting into the whole arena. The government is very involved. They have 2 government labs set up at this center. One of them is an offense-defense lab that's all around government research that they're going to be using. And, you know, I think the travesty there is a lot of the people going through this training will turn into hackers that maybe aren't doing necessarily good things. But I think about what if we did something similar in collaboration with government and formed a public-private union where we put something like this together. And instead of turning hackers out, we were turning out cybersecurity defenders and improving, you know, our chances of survivability and safety across the board. That should really be a goal for us in terms of modeling some of these key highlights and innovation aspects of this overall model that they're putting in place. The other thing is, if you see that I love about what they're doing is within this innovation hub that they have, they invite startups and individuals to come in with inventions, and then they sponsor those individuals through funding or through guidance. So they have like cybersecurity guidance and consultant experts that actually will guide them into a successful model and help them understand how to pitch for funding. So there's a whole entrepreneurial aspect of it, an entrepreneurial spirit to it that I think we could really learn from. So that's one model. We're doing some of that with government. You know, I know, for instance, our founder's very involved with the government, as are you, Val, and working with the National Science Foundation to help improve the number of grants that they're putting out, because right now the grants that they offer are very specialized, and it really doesn't appeal to the masses and a larger demographic. So those are all things that we can do. But overall, I think there are some things that we could learn from China in terms of how they're rolling this out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And talking about numbers, when you said 6,000, like what, 6,000 a year? And then you quickly clarified
6,000 a month. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, 6,000 certified a month.
I think somebody's got the numbers, aligned to what the need is. So, and also sets the model. Why not? Like, just no, absolutely. I think, we can't we do that? We absolutely can. But I think this is the starting point of that. Martin, your thoughts around that? Other models we could embrace?
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about this a little bit beforehand, but the apprenticeship models in the UK, in France, other parts of Europe are much more advanced than the models that we have in the US. And I think part of what's been successful there is setting up government programs and sort of government funding or government aligned funding that sometimes comes from employers as well, that can be used for programs that are actually delivered by for-profit companies. And so, abroad in France and in the UK, you have some very large companies that, create great outcomes, work with employers to kind of sponsor individual talent that's upskilling or reskilling as part of their workforces, and are able to build, large companies and sort of deliver good results. I think, in the US, there's been a bit of a sort of reluctance to involve the for-profit sector in that equation as much as it has been abroad. But companies like QA and Multiverse in the UK and in France, open classrooms are really helping to contribute to closing that skills gap, and doing it in a way that's delivering great outcomes and creating economic opportunity and workforce redevelopment in many cases. And so I do think that's an area of opportunity for the US. Obviously, the government is starting to think about more of those supports and programs and ways to encourage that kind of activity. But I would say we haven't moved fast enough in that respect. There are even some very obvious areas like the VA. Certainly, who better to defend America's cyber infrastructure than people who've been defending America physically? I think there are some limited exploratory programs there to channel former service members into the cyber domain, but that just seems like a huge opportunity for me, really kind of opening the spigot up on trying to make that connection and helping our former heroes sort of translate into jobs of the future and reposition their careers after they're done with their service to the country. So things like that just seem like huge opportunities, and we could probably learn from what's been happening abroad in the UK, France, and other markets.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I'm glad you brought it up because that's a area that I'm personally involved. CFF is very deeply involved. I wish we really go bold on this one because apprenticeship as a tool is absolutely not utilized the way it should be. And there are certain ways to do this, right? I mean, we have this internship, which we start with, and which is where people are in school. And then we wait until we hire them full time. And there's this opportunity that we miss in the middle to engage them in a commercially viable way. And I cannot emphasize of the fact, right? This is one of the pillars of your triad, Amy, you mentioned, right? It has to be commercially viable. We are a capitalistic economy. That's what we thrive on and successful as a country, our economy, and it has to be commercially viable. Right now, the way it's done is very difficult to get a start, and I think that's where the public sector and the government should invest more. And give you just an example, right? I mean, the current program that for cyber apprenticeship, which we were a part of founding that program with DOL, pays for $500 worth of training, right? But the requirement in terms of where it is you have to provide 144 hours of training through a year, and you have to pay the wages for a year, right? I mean, the wage relief is not that much. So you're literally hiring a full-time, not necessarily full-time, but 80% time of an employee, paying for all the wages, but you're not getting a productivity for a year, and that is not very commercially viable. So I believe this needs to be explored a little bit more. Also, in terms of the program, the way it's run right now is like an extension of the government, and I am kind of trying to positively critique this with the way I've seen this work. But the expectation is that this whole list of requirements, even though easy, is not really easy on the commercial side, and the government is expecting that they will just take it and run with it. I think it has to be a little bit more collaborative, the apprenticeship model and the registered apprenticeship model specifically, which is basically you have to say that to DOL, I'm running an apprenticeship, because then it becomes registered. So the internship is understood fairly well. The full-time employee is understood fairly well. The contract mechanisms are understood fairly well. But I think for it to work in IT and in cyber, we must make it commercially viable and sustainable, and engage more stakeholders, engage HR, engage other problems, which also I think is a point of discussion in this space, right? We have at least 2 or 3 sessions down through the week on whether we have a talent shortage or we have a problem with the structured hiring of people, and how can we bridge that gap, because I'm sure that our HR partners are looking for making it easy on them as much as we want it to be, efficient for us. So well, I think these are the very good ideas that Amy you mentioned about what's happening in China. That I'm definitely I think that's aspirational, but that can be done practically. And what you mentioned, Martin, about the apprenticeship is definitely doable. Let's pivot to another item I think needs probably a good amount of attention is where do we do automation versus where do we do talent? Because that's been I think a age-old tension that's already there. People feel that when automation comes in, robots are taking over the world. And what do people do, right? Is it AI or is it people? So your thoughts on that, because you're investing actively in this space, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, do you want to start, Martin, since you kind of have the macro view on how that's played out in the tech world, and then I'll give the cyber view?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there are certain parts of the sort of tech stack and certain competencies in the technology world that are more automatable, and that is happening. But I think there's always going to be sort of the more sort of innovative, creative elements of tech, and a human element generally required to respond to kind of the demands of the day. That's certainly true in the cyber domain. We've followed automation in a number of different ways as it relates to the sort of online education space, right? In terms of how you automate the education of individuals to bring them more quickly into the cyber workforce, we are seeing a lot more asynchronous training solutions rather than a synchronous experience that can be effective if delivered the right way. A lot of interesting simulation platforms, certainly some of these cyber ranges, which enable an individual to get more kind of real world experience on a simulated network environment rather than have to spin up all that infrastructure on their own. I think solutions like that are helping accelerate the talent development ecosystem. Amy probably has broader perspective on sort of automation of the cyber world, via kind of new technologies and new companies that help achieve that. But yeah, that's my side of the house at least.
Yeah. I mean, I would say we're slightly behind what Martin's seen in the market. But I think in terms of where cyber fits into the overall tech realm, there is a need for a high touch training model, right? And part of why we love the Thrive DX model and companies like them is they are infusing some automation in a SaaS-based platform so that some of the security awareness training and secure coding classes can be offered on a digital platform. But the real differentiator with them and the value I think comes in their higher level, high touch, expert-led cybersecurity bootcamp, cybersecurity academy training. And so rather than fully digitizing that and automating that, we're of the belief that the way to accelerate that type of training is to build an ecosystem around it that becomes self-sustaining. And so one of the ideas that we have, and that you'll probably see more from us on, is this idea of building what we're calling the world's first cybersecurity marketplace with Thrive DX and other companies like them who have kind of that perfect blend of automated training and also some cybersecurity expert-led training. They would basically be at the center of this marketplace, providing these trainings to universities. The universities would be delivering the training to the students. And then for the more specialized content, so that it becomes very customized and company specific, that would come from the employers. And so think of the marketplace as kind of a perfect union between educators and employers coming together to attract, build, and foster cybersecurity students through their training cycle. So companies like Deloitte, Ingram, big tech companies, Palo Alto, Cisco, even industry like Delta Airlines and Capital One, those organizations would be delivering some level of content that would be customized for the specific cybersecurity roles that they're hiring for. That would be delivered to the universities through Thrive and other companies that would then deliver this training to students. And in exchange, the employers then would have a bigger talent pool that they could recruit from with qualified students feeding into their organizations. So if you kind of create the right incentives within a life cycle or an ecosystem like that, it can help accelerate the number of students that you're turning out without fully digitizing the system, right? You're still using high touch training, trainers, skilled professors at universities, but the content is coming from a vast array of sources, and you're drastically increasing the level of literacy while at the same time driving the content up. So that's kind of where I think we're focused right now, because I don't think it would work to fully automate it. You just won't get the same quality of training, and you won't get students who really are as experienced as you need them to be in this market.
Yeah. I think automation only works to a certain extent, and also the personal touch that you need is extremely essential, right? Especially those that are trying to break into cyber career. Just asking that FAQ is not going to help them, or the bot's not going to help them. It needs that human touch. And then, coming from from Indian culture, I'd say Gurukul is one thing that we say, like, where gurus and the disciples work together. We need those gurus to be around to answer those questions, and that better be human.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
So, well, I think, when we expand that to the other realm, and to attain the same scale, and Martin, maybe you can take a shot at it, is about what are the attributes that you expect these companies to kind of have, right? To bring the same scale and rigor and discipline, to take the cyber skill set that or capacity that's now to the desired capacity that's later.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, in the broader tech kind of world, tech career training space, the businesses that have really distinguished themselves and led to very strong investor returns are those that are relentlessly focused on outcomes, number one, delivering great experiences for students and great outcomes, and, indirectly great hires for employers down the road. Number two, the companies that are scalable. Again, kind of the early days of the tech career alternative education boom were focused on on-ground boot camps. The more scalable version of that now, of course, is more online programs, some of which are cohort-based and synchronous, as sort of Amy was describing, some of which are more asynchronous in nature. But either way, scalability is really key, because you want to be able to impact as many individuals as possible, and from a purely business perspective, create a larger business that way. And I think, number three, really those that are finding a way to collaborate effectively with enterprise on either placement or funding mechanisms, or extending their business models into the enterprise, like ThriveDX is, with their set of SaaS solutions that are sold directly to enterprise customers around the anti-phishing awareness and training, the secure coding training and capability set. Those kinds of efforts to sort of couple the talent acquisition side and really the education side to kind of broader initiatives that can sustain an individual through the course of their career, I think can be really interesting and transformative, and create a large TAM opportunity, which frankly is what investors are really often looking for. So yeah, just a couple thoughts.
Yeah. No, I think that back to Amy. Probably you can address that, including probably an infused with it the DEI aspect, because this is an amazing opportunity to actually expand new employment opportunities, new professional career opportunities for people who have been traditionally marginalized, underrepresented, or underprivileged. This could change the life of a person or a family when we provide them a cyber career in cyber, right? So your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, going back to the first question in terms of what we're looking for in companies, we want to make sure that whoever's running the company that we're investing in we look for three things. We look for technology, TAM, and we look for the team. And it really starts with the team. We want to make sure that the team that we're investing in has some sort of experience in the space and has proven out the model. With the company that we invested in just recently, they're 15 years in the Israeli Defense Force. Many of them are former cybersecurity or are cybersecurity and digital training experts. And they saw it play out in a very fruitful and impactful way in Israel. And now we're just kind of repeating that model and taking those learnings and applying it to new markets. That's one. The other thing that we look for is to make sure that the organization, and Martin touched on this by talking about how they work with the enterprise, that they have these extensible and flexible business models, and they're willing to partner with other organizations, because a Thrive DX alone is not going to be able to solve this problem. They are absolutely going to have to partner with universities and educators and government. And Val, this fits squarely into your ethos and model around CFF. Those three things have to come together for us to solve this problem. And if you're working with a technology company, they need to have the level of awareness and the aptitude and the fortitude to be able to take that on and understand that partnership is the way that they're going to excel. And DE&I has to be a key part of that, right? Because they're not going to be able to tap into the workforce current workforce within cybersecurity that exists. They have to broaden the envelope, broaden the scope, and go after people who traditionally have not had access to cybersecurity training, and recruit those individuals and inspire them to be a part of the mission.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the opportunities are endless. So, well, I think we are right about time to wind this up. This has been a great conversation, and you have set the stage for a really great week for us to come ahead of us. I just wanted to get your kind of thoughts and expectations for maybe you have some outcomes that you want, not just from the Cyber Talent Week, but also actionable things that you can recommend our subsequent panelists and audience to take away from. So your thoughts around what would be one or two things that you want to take away for this audience?
Yeah, I guess maybe what I'd sort of like to see or plant the seed around is more ways that enterprise can sort of interact with the ecosystem and really start to fuel that engine of creating more graduates, sponsoring individuals, potentially trying to drive more quality graduates, maybe more diverse graduates as well. So I think my kind of takeaway and what I'd encourage the industry to focus on is really that partnership notion that we were just sort of discussing. Any ways to accelerate the efforts of companies like Thrive DX and others that are helping to close this gap, I think is super important, and has that multiple win that we were really talking about earlier in the conversation.
Excellent.
Yeah, and for me, I think it would be sort of a call to action to anybody that's in a cybersecurity role, no matter where you are in the industry, if it's with government, if you're at a university, if you're at a company, if you're at an enterprise, wherever you are, if you're in the world of cybersecurity and already kind of in that network and in that world, I would encourage you to really take this seriously as an opportunity where you can kind of blend an element of personal passion with mission around national security, and take advantage of that and help people who are looking to get into the industry. I mean, I didn't have a privileged life by any means conventionally, but I did find myself in San Francisco in the mid-90s during a technology boom, and then unprecedented technology boom. So I had access to a ton of resources and companies everywhere, and just sort of landed in cybersecurity. Well, not everybody has that advantage. And there's people in middle America who don't have access to a network or access to resources or access to training. So if you're in a position where you have that, please reach out to the community or find organizations like CFF where you can connect and provide some level of mentorship or some level of apprenticeship, because even just making that grassroots effort can certainly help people get into the industry and raises the level of awareness. Well,
that's excellent, and thank you for that passionate appeal. I think we all need that. We need great ideas. We need great implementers. We need action heroes who can actually make this happen. Cyber is still kind of thought of as an area that people really think of it as either very techy or something that they don't want to relate to. I think we want to make it relatable. So what Amy just mentioned is giving that the ability to feel it, touch it, be with us, and provide our time and energy as mentors would definitely go a long way getting these investments that you have made, the great content that is going to be is being prepared out of these investments, and make it easier for people to actually access them. So all of these three together, I think, will make for a very successful model for scaling the cyber capacity and addressing the cyber capacity challenges that we have today. So again, Thank you both for joining us, and please tune into the rest of the program as when you can. We have an exciting week ahead of us, and this definitely does a fitting job in setting the stage for that discussion. And for those that are tuned in, the next session is going to be around deconstructing each of the topics probably we talked here and getting all the stakeholders involved. So hang tight, we'll switch over to the next session as we unwind this. So thank you again for joining us, and thank you for your contribution, Amy and Martin, very much.
Yeah, thank you for